Okay. Camera. Gotta remember that. Alright. I'm upstairs. This is the coolest room in the house right now, so that's why I'm up here. If I did it outside, I wanted to show you my garden, but the sweat bees are terribly thick right now, and the mosquitoes and flies are just as bad. So, while I chit-chat with you guys, I'm going to string my peppers. I'm doing chili peppers, jalapenos, and banana peppers. Normally I would pickle the banana peppers, but it has not been a very good year as far as production has gone, so there's not enough to actually do it with. Anyway, several of you have asked how it came to be. How I came from a large city, moved out to the middle of nowhere, and have turned into all about country life. Plus being a former lately discovered I was a former liberal and socialist and didn't even know it. And now, I'm not really sure what to call myself. I guess it would be conservative, because that's mostly where I find the most common thread, I suppose you'd say. But I don't really know if I want to actually label myself anything in particular. So, alright, basically, it started, well, I guess I'd have to go back to when I met my husband. That would have been 2003. At that time, I was a devout Jehovah's Witness, and my older sister had just started attending again. So, there you go, Dan, I told you I'd drink. To encourage her, I decided to transfer congregations, and I started attending hers. That's where I met my ex, and we got to talking. Found out he was actually married, but they hadn't lived together for 6 years at that point in time. So he decides he likes me. We didn't do anything. It's not what Jehovah's Witnesses do. So he gets a divorce. Took him about a month. And we waited about another month before we started dating. Just, you know, that was appropriate, it felt. So we started dating, married him. By 2005, we had a kid. My son, David. Apple of my eye. And, oops, I missed that one. And, fast forward to when my son is 6 years old, so that would have been, he turns, birthday's in December, so that would have been early 2012. And for the third time, for the third time we were being evicted. So my family comes down from Orlando, because at that time we lived in Port St. Lucie. And they helped us move, me and my son. My ex at the time had decided to follow a supposed job opportunity in Delaware. Come to find out, it was following drugs. Wasn't exactly a great guy. He's changed a lot, though. I have to give him that. He's really come around, and I'm glad to see that. At any rate, if that hadn't happened, if I'd never met him, the rest of these circumstances wouldn't have fallen through. So, because we were being evicted for the third time because he was such a shit husband, that's what led to how I met Mike and how I ended up here. I started working well, actually, first off, I was living at home with my parents again, with my son, depressed. So for about 2 months, I didn't really do much of anything except take care of my son. One day, my little sister convinces me that I need to get out of the house. Okay, she's probably right. So we go to downtown Disney. And while we're there, and I don't remember exactly how she put it, somehow or other, she convinced me to apply to work at the Mouse. Now, I have never wanted to work at the Mouse. I'm not a big fan of Disney, but it was a job opportunity, so alright, it'll help me take care of my son, because obviously I was doing it by myself by that point in time. Pardon me. So, I apply. Turns out the woman who interviewed me had just moved back to Orlando herself and had literally lived the next street over from me in Port St. Lucie, and we didn't even know it. So, it's just kind of weird. Oh, and I forgot to mention, my ex-husband, his father, and my mother attended the same congregation in Massachusetts 40 years prior to us meeting, and they'd both moved to Florida and hadn't seen each other since they were teenagers. Small world. Pardon me. At any rate, back to where I was. I got the job at the Mouse, and I worked at Pecos Bills for a year and a half. And while I was working there, I met a guy named Troy, who has now passed away. But while I knew him, he introduced me to this game app called Reign of Dragons. You can't find it now. They shut it down December 3 years ago. So it doesn't even exist anymore. But in that game, in order to participate in wars, you had to join a guild. So I joined a guild and was up against this other one, obviously. That's how it works. And I was the only one in my guild fighting. I was the only one active, actually. And the members of the opposing guild sent me a message, said, "You're fighting by yourself, at least you're active, so are we. Why don't you come over and join us?" Okay. Went over and joined them. Within that guild, it was required that you download another app for communication that wouldn't disrupt the game, but so that you could say, "Hey, we're up against this guild in a little bit, you know, get your ass on," and not interrupt you if you were doing something else on the game. So, did that, and got to having conversations with them. Turned out to be a father and son team, and they weren't very personal at first, of course, but it got to the point where we enjoyed having conversation more than we enjoyed playing the game together, even though we still did. And I got to know them more and more, and eventually it came to more in-depth conversations with the father, who is Mike. So it just kind of evolved from there, but those are the circumstances that led to it, basically. I got married because the guy was a piece of shit. I ended up back home, working for the Mouse, and if I hadn't done that, and met Troy, who introduced me to the game, and then joined the guild, and then fought that particular one that is randomly selected, I never would have met Mike. Now, when I first moved here, I was still struggling a lot with who I was as a person. I was adamantly opposed to anybody who argued that they didn't want to hear gay people's rights, that they shouldn't be out there protesting. I mean, I was all about that. Some of my friends we're gay. How could you say that? Well, it's taken a while, but yeah, I gotta say I agree now, because you don't see heterosexual people out there going, I have a right to bang a pussy, I have a right to bang a man. They don't do that. I don't go out there and tell you about my sexual preferences. That's my business. Keep it to yourself. You think you don't have the same rights we do? You've always had the same rights we do. It's called a civil union, people. Civil union. Even roommates can do that. Just doesn't as pretty packaged as the word marriage. Good grief. Now, I didn't know that then. This is something I've learned since I came here. Sorry, this air conditioner is driving me bananas with trying to tie this. Anyway, now it has been a drastic change from living in a city my entire life to coming to this very, very small town of only about 300 people, learning how to plant and harvest and tend a vegetable garden, learn how to take that harvest and string it up or can it. Like I mentioned last night, I believe it was it's probably down, that here soon I'm going to be doing cherry preserves. So when I do that, I'm going to try to pick a day that's not quite so hot, because there's no AC in the kitchen, and so I'll have to have the box fan on, because once you get 4 pots going all at the same time, it gets mighty hot in there. So, let's see. We have zucchini. The peas didn't turn out. The beets didn't turn out. We tried to do them from seed, and it just, we must not have gotten some good seed. Green beans. Got those coming out of our ears. Although, I was out there yesterday picking on them, and something has happened to the stalks. I don't know exactly what that is. Either a rabbit got to them, or it's those damn cats. I don't know. Although I don't know the cats like green beans. Anyway, green beans. The onions, we haven't had much luck with onions. I planted 3 rows, and they're just not doing very well. So I don't think we're going to bother with those next year. And there's my herbs and peppers. And then the tomatoes. And on the other end, next to the tomatoes, is the strawberry bed. And it's the first year we really tried strawberries. And I'd say about 15 of the plants, yeah, 15 of them, aren't producing worth a damn. So, I don't know what's going on there. But, this is some of the stuff I've learned since I moved here. And gardening is just the tip of the iceberg. One of the more interesting things I learned after I moved here was just what is really involved with a man's job. I knew it was difficult. My father's a mechanic, and I used to work with him. I didn't do any of the work myself. I was basically the office manager, but I could see the work he was doing. And I appreciated what he was doing. My dad's got a really bad back, and so I always respected him for pushing on anyways and doing that hard work. And then helping him tend his own injuries after he bangs his head on the undercarriage of a car while it's on the lift. So I always appreciated it, but I never really understood it, not until I came here. Mike would come home from the oil field, and at that time, he was a pumper, which basically means he maintains the leases. He drives around to them, makes sure everything's functioning properly, the water injection, the berm, you know, the tanks, all that stuff, pressure, what have you. So he'd go out every day, come home, and at that time we were making a fair amount of money. We were doing all right. And so the tavern's just across the way. Tammy runs it. And he'd go over there. You know, you get back, you want to cool off, have a couple of cold ones, and relax, and not have to listen to any bullshit. Well, I was still in my unknown to even myself liberal socialist mode, and I would get pissed. I'd get pissed. I'd see the truck over there, and I'd be like, you went over to the tavern instead of coming here. It took a while for me to understand that, and when it changed was when he invited me to come with him one day. And then that kind of became normal for us to do. I'd go with him to work every day. Now, there was nothing I could ever do to help him. I didn't understand that much about it. But I got to see it. And that helped realign my perspective. And then, a year and a half ago, I actually got to pull wells with him. Now, that is not easy work. These are 400 to 500 foot wells. I was the tail guy. That means with each joint of pipe that comes up, and each joint's 25 foot, I slap on the elevator, which is what lifts the pipe out from the collar. And those elevators weighed 25 pounds apiece. Now, there's lighter ones, but these are the ones that we had at the time. Well, that Terry had, the one we were pulling the wells with, or he had the company, we used his rig. And then wrenched the pipe apart. Now, I couldn't actually wrench the pipe apart. I mean, look at me, I'm 105 pounds. There's no way I could do that. So what it ended up being was we shared, Mike was the operator, I was the tail guy. We shared the slapping on of the elevators because that's kind of heavy and I couldn't keep up with it. And he wrenched all the pipe and operated the rig. All I had to do was walk the pipe out and come back, get the next case. Walk out, come back. You do that twice for each joint on the way out. Then you get down to the pump, he works on the pump, and then you start putting it all back in. So that's 2 more times per length. Even just that little bit. These women who bitch about equal pay for the same job, you have never had the same job as a man. I'm sorry. Unless I see your ass get out there and do the shit that I was doing, and I couldn't even do all of it, I don't want to hear it. That's what I've learned since I moved here. My perceptions about life and what I thought I knew back then were so skewed. And my family, they think I don't know. They still love me, of course. Mom still talks to me, but they think I've fallen off the wayside. They don't even realize what they are. Now they still cling to the religion, Jehovah's Witness. But looking back at it, so many of their ideals, while they have a lot of good points, morals and whatnot, they're kind of socialists. They believe everyone's going to live in a utopia. You'll only work for yourself and there's no money, kind of like Star Trek. I mean, frequently, when growing up, Dad was addicted to watching Star Trek. So, therefore I did. Hence, some of the stuff I say online references Star Trek quite a bit. Information's there, you can't get rid of it. But often, when I was younger, I'd be like, Dad, one day, when we're in paradise, that's what they call it, paradise, we're going to build the Enterprise, and you and me are going to go and cruise around the galaxy and meet new people. It was my dream to live in this paradise and not have a worry in the world. Everyone's okay, everyone gets along, even the animals get along. Well, they just can't be. It just cannot be. There's, first and foremost, animals can't get along. There's a food chain. Their bodies are structured and designed, and their instincts to need to feed on other animals if they're a carnivore. If they're an herbivore, they've got to eat on the plants. But those herbivores feed the carnivores. They can't all get along. That'd be like me going out and trying to pet a lion that's never encountered a human. No. So I'm reminded of this memory of mine. It was one ever after the movie came out. If you haven't seen it, basically it's a girly film, obviously. I went there with my girlfriends to see it. Now, the theater was packed. I remember that. We always liked to sit toward the back and in the middle-ish. And there was this row of girls in front of us that would not stop chattering. Now, even if you don't like the movie, no one wants to hear chatter while you're trying to pay attention to it, right? Okay. So you keep hearing people whispering, please be quiet, shh, I can't hear. And it was going on for a good 10 minutes, at least. Now, you can hear my voice. You can tell how I've raised and lowered my, or I did that backwards, raised and lowered my octaves. I can be very loud without yelling if I want to. So, I finally get fed up with it. And, I raised my voice very loudly, and I said, "Shut up!" And there was a moment of utter silence, and then the entire theater started clapping. And thinking back to that makes me wish that you could do that with liberals today, and that it would actually work, and you get that round of applause, that, yes, you did it. I don't think that would work, really. But that's how I feel now. I used to be those chattering girls who didn't take the hint, and it took someone to basically yell at me to get me to stop, to get me to wake up. Now, it was a long progression, and it didn't exactly start after I moved here. I think I started seeing it before. I started asking a lot of questions. Things just weren't jiving. I was separated from my husband and gaining no support from the congregation for wanting to divorce him, because I couldn't prove he'd done anything wrong. Unless you have proof, you can't divorce him. That's wrong. They will disfellowship you for it. Now, you can do it anyway, but it's just not going to turn out very well for you. You'll be basically the black sheep, which I already was. So I started asking questions. They do not like that. And basically I just started keeping my mouth shut. Figured even when I want information, I can't get it. No one will it provided for me. So I started doing research for myself. Started with the Bible, and then I started looking into other avenues. And that's something they do not encourage. They only want you to read their material. You start reading other churches or institutions' material, especially anything that makes you think for yourself. Don't really like that. They won't stop you, but they highly discourage it. And that alone made me wonder, because there is a scripture, and I can't remember right now where it is, that says, keep testing these things for yourself if they are true. I paraphrased there. So that spurred me. So I started trying to learn these things on my own. Now, I didn't get very far. Plus, my ex-husband had already ingrained a lot into my mind from his perceptions. And some of it was insightful, I'll give him that. Some of it, he was a little off base. And we've both gotten past that now. He's come so very far, and I'm very proud of that. We still talk from time to time. We get along as it should be. I mean, we have a child together. There's no point in not getting along. I just don't understand that. But when I met Mike, at first it was because I already knew I loved him, even before I moved here. And he was so accepting of me. All my faults, even my silly ideas. He was okay with it. And that was so appealing to me. Because I'd never had that before. Every time I ever voiced my opinion on something, it was shut down. For example, I actually asked my mother once when I was younger. It's about 15. I asked her if we could start growing a vegetable garden and, you know, have our own produce so that we didn't have to keep going to the store and buying this stuff. Nope. God will take care of us. Mom, there's nothing wrong with having your own produce and being prepared. No, she wouldn't hear of it. And I grew up with that for most of my life. So after 34 years of that, having someone just say, you have thoughts of your own, you can voice them. You can say whatever you want. Doesn't mean you're right, but you have an opinion. Voice it. And I thought about that for a while. That instinctive, no, this isn't what I know. I have to fight it. Even though it was exactly what I wanted, I was fighting it. And then he started telling me that if I didn't take care of myself, I was no good for anybody else. I thought that for a long time too. I thought it was selfish. Well, I know better now. Took me a long time to come to terms with that, but I did. I'm very thankful. Very thankful for everything that he's given me. If it weren't for him, I'd probably still be living in my parents' house, eating junk food and weighing almost 140 pounds, and still not understanding where the hell I am. Actually, I'm still learning that. I'm not sure we ever actually come to a conclusion on that. I think it's all a learning process. Every single thing is, At any any rate, so city life versus country life, it's far different. First of all, the entire time I lived in the city, I met a lot of people. It was mostly school, work, congregation. These little bubbles. Here, you just drive down the road and know everyone I pass, and everyone waves, and then I can go to the next town over and I know almost everybody there. Spoke with Rose today. She works in the quick shop. See her almost on a daily basis. Her, Fred, Angel, Duffy. Ran into Paul the other day over there. Hadn't seen him for a little while, but it was nice to see him. It's just everywhere I go here, I know people. Now, I'm not great acquaintances with any of them, but I know them. And that's not something I could have ever experienced down in Florida. You drive down the road, and if you wave at someone, they look at you all cockeyed like you're crazy. Here, it's just expected because everybody knows everybody. And it gives a stronger sense of community, a stronger feeling. And then I've got my garden, and this house, even though it's a cobbled together mess of a house, it's alright. It's alright. And we're poor, but I'm okay with that. I don't need much. I'm not one of those materialistic women who needs a new car, a new phone, or new clothes. I mean, hell. Example. See that? I've had these shorts since I weighed close to 140. And I refuse to buy anything new because these still have life in them. And I'm trying to gain some weight back because 105 really is not a healthy weight. Now, I do have my flaws. For example, you saw me smoking a cigarette earlier. I know that's not good. I've only been doing that for, so what's it been, 6 years now? Yeah. Yeah, about 6 years now. Yeah, in March. If you'd told me 7 years ago that I'd be a smoker and live in Kansas, in Podunk, nowhere, I'd never have believed you. But now, this is just, it's home here. I've never felt more at home than I do here. I never was a big city person. Some of my favorite memories were visiting Grandma and Grandpa out in the Baileys. First, they lived in, well, after they moved out of Gulfport, they moved to Ocala, middle of nowhere, and we'd go out and visit them all the time. And my uncle, who's younger than me, he's actually my brother's age, he's more like a cousin. We just have a grand old time, just exploring the woods and running around. I mean, what kids used to do. Now they sit inside and fidget all day. And then they moved to Georgia, Twin City. And the only neighbor they had was my aunt and uncle, Ed and Bonnie, and my cousins, Robbie, Corey, and Stacy. And between them, us 4 kids, and my uncle, we entertained ourselves just fine. And it was fun. It was some of the most pleasant memories I have. So I always enjoyed being out in the middle of nowhere so much more than I did being in the city. think I always yearned for that. So I always knew I didn't belong there. I never loved Florida, ever. Actually hated Florida. So ungodly hot and humid. 10 months out of every year. It's awful. Ugh. Not to mention the education system down there is backwards. Even my son recognizes that. He just turned 12. And I spoke to him on the phone the other day, and he goes, "Oh my God, Mom, I am so glad I'm out of Florida. Their schools are so messed up." And I said, "I know what you mean." And he goes, "No, seriously, I got here, and it's so different. I know so much more now. I didn't realize what they were doing to us down there." It's like, wow. 12 years old, and he can see that for himself. Now, his dad probably said something to him, but he grasped it. And that, to me, is pretty cool. And he's actually getting pretty smart. He talks about the assassination of JFK. He talks about 9/11. And how it's all BS stories. Now, he doesn't say those words, but basically that's his feeling about them, is that it's all BS. And that in itself makes me very proud. He's already learning more than I ever did at that age. Amazing what you learn when you finally get out of that cloud, or the thumb they put on you, and they just try to keep it there. When you finally get free from it, and I guess I'm getting a little bit too I can't even think of the proper word. But you know what, I'm sure you understand exactly what I'm saying. Well, shoot, there was something else I wanted to talk about. And now that I've rambled on so long, I can't remember. That is typical me. That's probably typical female. I mean, come on. Our minds jump in so many different directions constantly. That's why arguments with women are so hard to put up with. God, even for me, I can't stand it. You start off talking about something, maybe just a friendly debate, and she'll bring up something from 5 years ago, that one time, and this person did that, and da da da. And then before you know it, you're actually in an argument with this person about something you did that once it was done, it was done. Why is she bringing it up? What the hell are you talking about? See, that's the difference for men and women. And I don't know why women cannot get this. Once the problem has been resolved, it's done. It's over. Don't bring it up again. There's no point. That's how men think. We took care of that. Or I took care of that 5 years ago. Oof. And the only people who have ever truly been really cruel to me is women. I have never had a problem with a man. Well, except for my ex-husband, but that kind of comes hand in hand when one is abusing the other. I'm not going to get into details. But I don't know, maybe my brain is wired differently. Hell, most of my followers on Twitter are men. And I get along great with them. And never have a problem. The only time I ever have problems with anybody is women. For example, this is the kind of thing that happens in a small town. everyone talks about everybody. After I first moved here, people couldn't believe that I had moved 1,200 miles from Florida to be here. They thought I had to have been after something. Well, Mike doesn't have any money to speak of. Yeah, he owns his house, but it's an old Sears home from 1890, and it's not worth shit. So, not bad. He used to have a few cars. Were they nice cars? Yeah, they were. But I had my own car. It's not bad. I had my own phone. Actually, I moved up here with quite a bit of money myself. I had saved up for a few months. That's what you do. But they couldn't believe it. They thought I had to have been after something, so rumors started flying around town that I must be fucking other people. The last time they tried that, we had recently, Drew lives just over the way, kind of kitty corner to the tavern behind it. And we had pulled in there one day to go inside the tavern. Back then, most everybody used the back door. That's just, it was our common entrance. And Drew's sitting at his fire pit, and he invites us over for a beer. Okay, well, we're going to have a couple in here, and then we'll be over. Okay, no big deal. Sitting there, hanging out, good conversation. Shortly thereafter, he comes up with the brilliant idea of, well, I've got this smoker here. You guys come over one night, and we'll sit around the fire and have a beer and eat some food. Okay. So we made potato salad, pea salad, and baked beans. And brought them on over that when we got it all set up. Drew had the fire going, the meat going. And I was wearing one of my favorite summer dresses. It's a very long green dress, but it's kind of low cut. But it's comfortable. I like it. Sorry. Well, Drew's woman, Mary, who used to own the cafe and lives just a few houses down and facing Drew's backyard. She saw what she believed to be indiscretions. I asked Drew if I could use the bathroom, and when I walked in the house, I couldn't tell where it was, so Drew came in to show me. While he was in there, he went to the kitchen and started washing some of the dishes from the meal we'd just eaten. Mike was still sitting out back, and he was talking to Ralph. Ralph had stopped by. So because Drew and I were inside the house, even for that short length of time, and Mike was still outside, she immediately assumed I was fucking Drew. That rumor flew around town. And one day, shortly thereafter, Mike and I stopped by John's, and that's like aside from the tavern, it's like the local hangout. Everybody goes to John's to shoot shit and drink there. So we went over there, and Drew showed up. And right as we were about to leave, Drew asked if he could talk to us, and he followed us back home. And he goes, "Do you know that apparently you and I are fucking?" I said, "What?" Looked at Mike. Mike looks at me. We both knew it was bullshit. Nope, that was the rumor going around. He wouldn't tell us who started it, but we both knew. Come on. So, there you go. Behind every problem, there's always a book. Well, at least problems like those. Rumors and shit. That's just my opinion. But I do believe it's an accurate one. That being said, yeah, have had some good experiences with women. Very few and far between, but there have been some good ones. I don't know. Maybe I should just stop talking now. I've probably bored you enough. I know there was something else I wanted to talk about, but I just cannot think of it right now. Oh, on a side note, no, wait a minute, no, I shouldn't say that. That's none of my business. Actually, I shouldn't have been told about it. So no, I'm not going to talk about that. And no, please do not ask. It is not something everyone needs to know about. It's truly not. The second you put someone's private information out there, that's not right. I don't agree with that. Alright, well, I suppose that's enough for now. The next time I do a video, I wanted to show you my garden, but like I said, with all the sweat bees and mosquitoes and flies, it's just awful out there right now. So I'm going to save that for a day when it's a bit cooler. Hopefully that'll be soon. Doubt it, because it is August. Here in about another month, I looked at the tree earlier, and it's getting close. Way over Dana and Diana's property, they let us harvest their Japanese pear tree. Last year we missed out because I had an emergency surgery, but this year we're going to have, I don't know what I'm going to do with all of them. Probably syrup and pie filling. I don't know. I'll have to work on that one. Alright, well anyway, I will set up to make cherry preserves here in a few days and make a video showing you all about that. That's something that I learned on my own after I moved here. And I'll share a story about my first canning experience and the entertainment that came from that. So it was a good story. Anyway, that's what's coming up. Probably be a few days, but yeah, that's it. It was good to talk to you guys. Hopefully I didn't bore you. Everyone take care. Best wishes.